The natural world contains plants that seem designed to challenge what we think a plant can be. Plants that produce flowers indistinguishable from the insects they are trying to attract. Plants that move faster than any animal you could outrun. Plants that glow, bleed, trap, deceive, explode, and survive conditions that would make a cactus look fragile. Plants that have been growing on this planet since before the dinosaurs and that have solved biological problems in ways so unexpected that scientists are still working out exactly how they do it. Most of these plants will never appear at a garden center. Most people will never encounter them outside of a botanical garden or a documentary. But knowing they exist changes something about how you think about the plant kingdom as a whole, because each one of them represents a solution to a biological challenge that evolved over millions of years, and that is genuinely astonishing when you understand what it is doing and why. Here are 15 of them. Plant 1 is Hydnora africana, the underground flower. This plant has no leaves, no chlorophyll, and no stem above the soil surface. It is a parasite that attaches its root system to the roots of euphorbia shrubs in southern Africa and draws all its nutrition directly from the host. The only part of the plant that ever appears above ground is the flower, a bizarre fleshy structure that pushes up through the desert soil and looks like nothing so much as a series of jaws opening from below. The interior of the flower heats itself to the temperature of decaying flesh, releases compounds that smell exactly like rotting material, and traps dung beetles and carrion beetles inside a chamber lined with backward-pointing hairs that prevent escape until pollination is complete. It then releases them. The dung beetles leave carrying pollen to the next flower. The plant has no use for sunlight, soil nutrients, or anything else the conventional plant world runs on. It has outsourced all of that to its host and invests entirely in the single brief above-ground event that is its flower. Plant 2 is Welwitschia mirabilis, the living fossil. Hydnora africana belongs to a broader group of holoparasitic plants that have independently evolved the ability to live entirely at the expense of other plants. What makes this evolutionary pathway interesting is not that it happened once, which would be extraordinary enough, but that it has happened many times independently in different plant lineages. The loss of chlorophyll and adoption of a fully parasitic lifestyle has evolved separately in at least 12 different plant families, suggesting that when a host provides enough resources, the metabolic cost of maintaining photosynthetic machinery becomes a disadvantage rather than an asset, and evolution repeatedly selects for its elimination. Hydnora is simply the most dramatic example of a strategy that the plant kingdom has found independently successful on multiple occasions. Plant 2 is Welwitschia mirabilis, the living fossil. This plant grows only in the Namib Desert of Namibia and Angola, one of the driest places on Earth. It has exactly 2 leaves, not 2 at any given time, 2 for its entire life. The 2 leaves that emerged when the plant was a seedling are the same 2 leaves it carries when it is 1,000 years old, growing continuously at their base while their tips fray and split in the desert wind. The oldest known Welwitschia specimens are estimated to be over 2,000 years old, making them among the oldest living organisms on land. The plant absorbs most of its water not through its roots but through its leaves, which collect condensation from coastal fog. It has been on Earth in essentially its current form since the Jurassic period, which means it survived the extinction events that eliminated the dinosaurs and everything else that was alive in the same era by simply not changing. Plant 3 is Dracaena cinnabari, the dragon blood tree. The dragon blood tree grows on the island of Socotra off the coast of Yemen and looks like something out of a science fiction film. The trunk is thick and heavily textured. The canopy is a perfect upward-pointing umbrella shape, as flat on top as if it had been cut with a saw. When the trunk is cut, it bleeds a vivid red resin called dragon's blood that has been used as medicine, dye, and varnish throughout the Arab world and the Mediterranean for thousands of years. The unusual umbrella shape of the canopy is a functional adaptation. In the dry season on Socotra, the flat canopy collects dew from morning fog, and the water drips from the leaf tips directly down to the root zone below, irrigating the tree from its own canopy in a landscape where rain is scarce and unpredictable. Plant 4 is Mimosa pudica, the sensitive plant. The sensitive plant folds its leaves inward and droops its stems within seconds of being touched, a movement response that is faster and more dramatic than any other touch response in the plant kingdom. The mechanism is hydraulic. Specialized cells at the base of each leaflet rapidly pump out the water that gives them their turgor pressure, causing the leaves to collapse. The response travels across the plant as a wave, and a single touch at one end of a branch can trigger folding all the way to the other end within 2 to 3 seconds. The plant recovers within 15 to 30 minutes as the cells refill. Scientists have demonstrated that Mimosa pudica can learn, in the sense that if it is repeatedly exposed to a harmless stimulus that initially triggers leaf folding, it stops responding to that specific stimulus while continuing to respond normally to genuinely threatening ones. This is habituation, the most basic form of learning, and its presence in a plant without a nervous system remains one of the more interesting unresolved puzzles in plant biology. Plant 5 is Amorphophallus titanum, the corpse flower. The corpse flower holds the record for the largest unbranched inflorescence in the plant kingdom, producing a single flower structure that can reach 3 meters in height. It blooms once every 7 to 10 years, with individual plants sometimes going decades between bloom events. When it does bloom, it does so for approximately 48 hours, during which it heats its central spike to body temperature, releases an odor that accurately mimics decomposing flesh, and attracts the carrion flies and beetles that pollinate it before the flower collapses. Botanical gardens that have corpse flower specimens announce bloom events in advance, and thousands of visitors line up to witness and smell a bloom that lasts less than 2 days and may not happen again for another decade. The plant spends most of its life as a single underground corm, occasionally producing a single leaf that can reach 6 meters in height before dying back and returning to dormancy. Plant 6 is Nepenthes raja, the giant pitcher plant. This is the largest carnivorous plant in the world, with pitchers that can hold up to 3.5 liters of digestive fluid. The pitchers are large enough to trap and digest not just insects but small vertebrates including rats and frogs, which have been documented falling into the pitchers and being fully digested. The fluid in the pitchers is maintained by the plant at a pH between 2 and 3, roughly the acidity of stomach acid. The rim of the pitcher, the peristome, produces nectar that attracts insects to its edge, where the surface becomes frictionless from a wax layer that causes the insect to slip and fall into the fluid below. The plant grows in the highlands of Borneo and has developed an additional relationship with tree shrews and bats that drink the nectar from the pitcher lid while defecating into the pitcher, providing nitrogen directly to the plant without being digested. The plant has essentially evolved a separate system for obtaining nitrogen from vertebrates without harming them, which runs in parallel with its conventional system of trapping and digesting insects. Plant 7 is Dionea muscipula, the Venus flytrap. The Venus flytrap is the most famous carnivorous plant in the world and one of the most mechanically sophisticated. Each trap lobe contains 3 trigger hairs. 2 stimulations of any trigger hair within 20 seconds of each other causes the trap to snap shut. The trap distinguishes between raindrops, debris, and insects by requiring 2 trigger events before closing, filtering out false positives that would waste energy. After closing, the plant seals the trap and begins digesting only if further movement continues inside, filtering out the possibility of having snapped shut on a non-living particle. The number of trigger hair stimulations is also counted. 5 to 7 trigger events after initial closure cause the plant to produce more digestive enzymes, scaling its chemical response to the likely size of the meal. A plant without a nervous system is counting, distinguishing between types of stimuli, and making threshold-based decisions about resource investment, using mechanisms that remain not fully understood at the molecular level. Plant 8 is Rafflesia arnoldi, the largest individual flower. The Venus flytrap's counting behavior is part of a broader set of sophisticated information processing capabilities documented in carnivorous plants. Sundews, bladderworts, and pitcher plants all demonstrate forms of threshold-based response to stimuli that filter out false positives and scale their responses to the likely nutritional value of prey. What makes the Venus flytrap exceptional within this group is the speed of its trap closure, approximately 100 milliseconds, and the specificity of its trigger response. The requirement for 2 electrical signals within a defined time window is a mechanism that has independently evolved in several other plant lineages that use snap traps, suggesting that this particular solution to the false positive problem has been arrived at independently more than once in plant evolutionary history. Plant 8 is Rafflesia arnoldi, the largest individual flower. Rafflesia produces the largest individual flower of any plant in the world, up to 1 meter in diameter and weighing up to 11 kilograms. Like Hydnora africana, it is a parasite with no leaves, stems, or chlorophyll. It lives entirely within the vine tissue of its host, visible externally only as a small bud that grows slowly for months before opening into the enormous flower. The flower smells of decomposing flesh, attracting the carrion flies that pollinate it. It blooms for 5 to 7 days before collapsing. The flower produces either male or female reproductive structures, but not both, which means that successful pollination requires a carrion fly to have visited both a male and a female Rafflesia bloom within their brief overlapping windows of viability. The rarity of this double coincidence is one reason the plant is endangered throughout its range in Southeast Asian rainforests. Plant 9 is Euphorbia obesa, the baseball plant. This perfectly spherical succulent from South Africa looks so precisely round that it was initially described by European botanists as a manufactured object rather than a plant. The sphere is a functional adaptation. The shape minimizes the surface area exposed to the desiccating desert sun relative to the volume of water stored inside, which is the most mathematically efficient possible solution to the problem of water retention in an arid environment. The plant has no leaves. Photosynthesis happens through the green skin of the sphere. The sphere is segmented into 8 sections like a basketball and marked with a pattern of horizontal lines that are the vestigial positions of leaves that evolution has eliminated over millions of years as unnecessary in the desert context. It is now so collectible that wild populations are endangered from overharvesting, which for a plant that solved the geometry of desert survival with extraordinary precision is an ironic conclusion. Plant 10 is Selaginella lepidophylla, the resurrection plant. This small fern relative from the Chihuahuan Desert can lose 95% of its water content, desiccate completely into a tight brown ball that looks like dead dried plant material, and survive in that state for years. Add water, and within 24 hours it rehydrates, unfurls, and returns to full green photosynthetic function. The plant can go through this cycle repeatedly without permanent damage. It does not merely tolerate desiccation. It has evolved specific biochemical processes that protect its cellular structures during desiccation and reverse those processes during rehydration. Researchers studying the resurrection plant's desiccation tolerance have identified specific genes and proteins that may have applications in drought-resistant crop development, and the plant's cellular survival strategies are currently an active area of applied plant biotechnology research. Plant 11 is Puya raimondi, the century plant of the Andes. The resurrection plant's survival strategies are now the subject of active applied research because the same cellular protection mechanisms that allow Selaginella lepidophylla to survive complete desiccation may be transferable to crop plants through genetic engineering. Agricultural drought is one of the most significant threats to food security globally, and plants that can survive complete water loss and resume function when water returns represent a biological model for drought tolerance far beyond what conventional breeding has achieved. Several specific genes responsible for desiccation tolerance in resurrection plants have been identified, and attempts to introduce them into crops including rice and wheat are ongoing. The modest-looking desert plant that rolls into a ball is currently one of the most scientifically valuable plants under active investigation in crop biology. Plant 11 is Puya raimondi, the century plant of the Andes. Puya raimondi grows only in the high Andes of Peru and Bolivia at altitudes between 3,000 and 4,000 meters above sea level. It spends between 80 and 150 years as a rosette of spiny leaves growing slowly in the thin mountain air, then produces a single flowering stalk that can reach 12 meters in height, carrying up to 30,000 flowers, and dies. The flowering stalk is among the tallest produced by any plant in the world relative to the preceding vegetative growth. The plant invests a century of slow growth into a single reproductive event and then completes its life cycle. The flowering stalk takes several months to complete its bloom, and hummingbirds that find it become temporarily dependent on it as a nectar source. When the plant dies after flowering, the stalk remains standing, dry and structural, for months, providing perching and nesting sites for birds in a landscape where woody vegetation is otherwise absent. Plant 12 is Dionea muscipula's distant cousin, Drosera, the sundew. Sundews are found on every continent except Antarctica, and represent one of the most successful carnivorous plant lineages on Earth. The leaves are covered with reddish glandular tentacles tipped with a glistening sticky mucilage that looks exactly like water droplets in morning sunlight. Insects land on the leaves expecting to drink from what appears to be dew, and are instead stuck fast. The tentacles then move, slowly bending toward the center of the leaf over a period of minutes to hours, pressing the trapped insect against more digestive glands. Some sundew species produce their own light, bioluminescence that may enhance their attractiveness to insects at dusk when the sticky droplets are less visible, but the glow of the leaf is detectable. The bioluminescence in sundews is one of the more recently documented and less well understood phenomena in carnivorous plant biology. Plant 13 is lithops, living stones. Lithops are succulent plants from southern Africa that have evolved to be visually indistinguishable from the stones and pebbles among which they grow. The upper surface of each plant, which is the only part visible above the soil, has the exact color, texture, and patterning of the surrounding rocks, producing a camouflage so accurate that amateur botanists sometimes step on populations of living lithops because they cannot distinguish the plants from the stones. The camouflage is not ornamental. It is a defense against herbivores that would otherwise consume the water-rich plant tissue in an environment where any source of moisture is attractive to animals. The plant has essentially evolved to not exist visually in the landscape that it actually occupies. Plant 14 is Tacachantrieri, the black bat flower. The black bat flower produces flowers that are so dark they appear almost black, with long filamentous bracts that extend up to 30 centimeters from the flower and resemble whiskers or antennae. The overall form of the flower closely resembles a bat in flight. It grows in the tropical forests of Southeast Asia and produces flowers that are pollinated by flies attracted by the plant's faint musky odor. The black coloration of the flower, which is extremely unusual in the plant kingdom, where dark pigmentation is metabolically expensive, is thought to function as a thermal collector in the shaded forest understory, warming the flower to enhance the dispersal of its attractant compounds. The plant is now cultivated as a houseplant specialty around the world, where its extraordinary appearance generates the same reaction from everyone who sees it for the first time. Plant 15 is Deinococcus radiodurans, which is not actually a plant, but rather a bacterium that grows in plant contexts and deserves mention for a quality that no actual plant shares. Instead, Plant 15 properly is Welwitchia's remarkable cousin among the ancient plants, Ginkgo biloba, the maidenhair tree. Ginkgo biloba is the sole surviving species of a plant division that was once distributed across every continent. The entire division, with hundreds of species, was essentially eliminated in mass extinction events over the past 200 million years, leaving a single species that was preserved in cultivation in Chinese monasteries after its wild populations were eliminated. The distinctive fan-shaped leaves have not changed in 200 million years, as documented in the fossil record. Ginkgo biloba in the fossil record from the Jurassic period is immediately recognizable as the same plant growing on city streets today. It has survived every extinction event in the past 200 million years, including the asteroid impact that eliminated the dinosaurs, through what appears to be a combination of extraordinary physiological resilience, flexible reproductive strategy, and the intervention of human cultivation in the final phase of its wild-range elimination. These 15 plants are not oddities or exceptions. What Ginkgo biloba demonstrates more vividly than any other plant on this list is that survival over geological time scales is not primarily a matter of competitive performance in current conditions. Ginkgo does not outperform other trees in any measurable ecological metric. It is not the most drought-tolerant, the most productive, or the most efficient at anything that trees do. What it appears to have is physiological flexibility that allows it to survive a wide range of conditions and a biochemical complexity that makes it unpalatable to most insect herbivores. Add 200 million years of survival practice and the human decision to cultivate it because of its medicinal properties, and you have the last surviving member of an entire plant division that lost everything else it ever had. These 15 plants are not oddities or exceptions. They are reminders of the actual range of what a plant can be and do when evolution has had enough time and enough pressure. Every one of them solved a biological problem that we consider unsolvable through conventional means, with means that we are often still trying to understand. The plant kingdom is considerably stranger and considerably more capable than the garden center aisle suggests. Drop a comment telling me which of these 15 plants surprised you most and whether you have ever seen any of them in person. I read every comment. Give this a thumbs up if it changed how you think about what a plant can be, and subscribe for plant science content that goes to the genuinely extraordinary every single week.